we will talk about the impact on Atlanta with Acuna Jr. being out for the season, but I certainly wasn't thinking that at first. It was just, oh man, a generational player done for the year, similar injury, and look, you need your legs to be able to do what Ronald Acuna Jr. does on a night in, night out basis. And we got a good decade or so of Mike Trout before, he just started recently breaking down, and he was already put together the Hall of Fame career that's going to get him to Cooperstown. And it's like, if we were talking about buying stock on whether or not Ronald Acuna Jr. makes to Cooperstown, it's got to be a lot lower than it was this time yesterday, because you do need to compile a little bit. You do need to have 7 dominant or so seasons to insert yourself into that conversation of, well, you weren't around that long, but while you were around, you dominated, and Acuna just feels like he's just short of that. So hopefully he can rebound from this and get his career back on track. Still young, 26 years old.
He's got time.
Yeah.
It's just insane that it happened again. And I am looking, I think it was the other knee. So now you just got to wonder, like, moving forward, I think there was a big mental hurdle we saw Acuna go through. When you look at what he did in 2022, the power wasn't quite there. He still stole 29 bases, but the following year, like, he stole 73 bases, and we saw he was running without any fear. I mean, he was able to explode. Now that this has happened again, what type of mental toll does it take on Acuna when he finally gets back on the field? Because going through this again, it's now got to always be present in his mind. Whenever he's on a baseball field, this can happen to me. Just horrible. And whenever you see the non-contact injury in sports, it's almost never just a sprain. It's almost always this. And that was everyone's sort of worst fear when it first came out. And sure enough, it wasn't even 24 hours after it happened that we get the diagnosis that he's done.
Professional athletes are amazing what they can put their body through, or they can put their mind through to force their body to go through it. I mean, there's so many players. Think about, there was a time when Giancarlo Stanton's face got smashed in, getting hit by a pitch, and he's still out there in the batter's box, not shying away from a fastball up and in. Ryan Feltner last year took a line drive, had a fractured skull off the bat of Nick Castellanos, and he's out there now, not, shrinking away after every single pitch, worried about getting hit. So it's amazing that how these guys do that, and how many of them. I think we talked about it recently. Maybe it was in terms of Paul Skeens, where he just goes out there and is almost expecting he'll need Tommy John surgery at some point, but instead of protecting his body from the knife, right? You never want to have surgery of any kind. You want to be able to rehabilitate it somehow. But instead of protecting his body, he just goes in full force, and you just have to put that out of your mind. It's incredible.
It is. I mean, that's so it's a lot harder than people realize to be able to put your body out there like that. And even, Mike Trout this year, I saw Joe Adele on a podcast the other day talking about that injury. And I guess I didn't see it, but I guess there was some national media, Stephen A. Smith, that was questioning Mike Trout and saying that baseball players are soft and all this other stuff. But Joe Adele said that Mike Trout got hurt and he finished that game before ending up on the IL for an injury that's going to keep him out for months. I mean, to be able to play through things is just incredible. Last year, Francisco Lindor played through, I think it was like bone spurs in his elbow or something. We see that a lot with these guys where you find out later, they're going through it, especially in baseball, where these guys are in a marathon of a season playing every single day, basically for 6 months. It's crazy the stuff that they play through and how they just do whatever they can to post up and get themselves in the lineup every day.
They definitely don't get the same credit that football players do, right? Was it maybe Ronnie Lott broke his finger and had it
like cut off or something?
I think he did. He had it cut off, right?
Yeah, I think he had it cut off and went back into a playoff game or something. Yeah,
that's a little bit extreme, but
yeah,
baseball players do that maybe to a slightly lesser degree, and I think it's surprising because it's, like you said, non-contact for Ronald Acuna Jr., but there isn't that same impact with football. But these guys are playing through it all the time, and they don't talk about it. I don't think football players really do either. But I think maybe baseball players even less so, because could give the opponent a little bit of an advantage. And because you're playing 6-7 games a week, you're going to lose a couple. And as soon as you start talking about, well, I'm not feeling great or this, that, and the other, it sounds like an excuse. So you know what? You just kind of zip your lip, you play through the injury, and then all of a sudden, a guy's out for the rest of the year, and you didn't realize that he was playing banged up through the first quarter of the season plus.
A lot of times you'll see a player at the end of the season, the stats aren't great, and you have been wondering about it, and then all of a sudden you see like the off season, oh, you got a hip cleaned up or a knee, and you're like, oh, maybe that's why he was way worse than he's been throughout his career. So yeah, injuries are the worst. And now as we sort of turn the page on it for the Braves, how do they fill this void? I think in the short term, it's pretty simple. Adam Duvall and Jared Kelenic, who have been splitting time, are suddenly everyday guys. And you look at what they've done this year, neither one of them really jumps out. They're both sitting at about league average when it comes to their offense. So now you look at moving forward, those guys are going to be pushed out to the forefront. We were talking about who replaced him. And you said it was JP Martinez, which I said was like a creative player. I had no idea who that was that filled in, but the Braves are a team that likes to play their starters every single day. So I think in the short term, that's the answer. And you know that if any team tries to put a somewhat competent fourth outfielder through waivers at any point before the deadline, the Braves are going to be the first team looking to make a claim there to add some depth to that outfield, because it doesn't feel like they have a lot in the works here.
Brian Snitker is probably gonna have to manage maybe for the first time in his career, right? Doing a little mixing and matching. Could you possibly even see Travis d'Arnaud play some first base, or Sean Murphy, right? Keep their bats in the lineup if you want to DH for somebody else.
Could we see Ozuna get in the outfield again? I wouldn't have thought it, but now that you say that would be an option, right? When you get Sean Murphy back, you DH one of your catchers and you stick Ozuna in left field. I mean, it might be their best option at some points this season, honestly, even though I can't even tell you the last time Ozuna was out in the outfield. But then again, that's your best hitter who's killing it as a DH. So, do you want to take away from what he's doing so well and force him back into an outfield role? It's going to be tough for them to try to figure this out.
I agree with what you were saying about if someone gets designated for assignment, they can work a deal out or it gets waived, right? Because there's only like two other position players, even on the 40-man roster, that Atlanta can tap into, because they've got, I think, 6 starters basically down in AAA Gwinnett. So they did call up JP Martinez, as you said, not to be confused with JD Martinez, who's Julio Daniel Martinez. This JP Martinez is Julio Pablo Martinez. And I'm sure Atlanta hopes that, he actually can be a knockoff version, if you will, of JD Martinez, because even still, that's going to it's going to have a lot of value, I think, for Atlanta. So a lot of weight resting on the shoulders of Kelenic and Duvall. And, while Atlanta's farm system, we've talked about this throughout the season, that, they've got all their biggest pieces locked up and extended long term. So their farm system maybe isn't as strong as it's been in the past, but they can still use a couple of those chips to bring in guys. And all you need is some veteran presence in a clubhouse like that. Look, it worked in 21, right? Bringing in, Jock Peterson, Adam Duvall, Eddie Rosario. There were 4 guys that they all brought in, and they meshed really well. And they could do that again without giving up some of their top prospects.
I think that's definitely the move. And there's a guy that I think would love to demand a release from his current team to go to the Braves, and that's Kevin Pillar. Kevin Pillar talked a lot about how much he loved being a Brave. And I bet you that's a guy that they wish that they could grab right now. And he's actually looking at his stats. He's hitting 329 for the Angels right now with a 981 OPS, 5 home runs for Kevin Pillar and 79 at-bats. I doubt that's sustainable at 35 years old, but Kevin Pillar is a name that I'd watch out for at the deadline for the Braves, that sometimes they'd like to cycle back to some of their former players. We saw them do that with Adam Duvall, and I mean, I'm sure they're thrilled that they actually did make that signing at the 11th hour free agency, because now Duvall plays a huge role for them. But Kevin Pillar, Tommy Pham, I mean, those veteran outfielders, like you said, that would be available at the deadline, it seems like that's where they're going to have to go. We were wondering, how would a team like the Braves attack this deadline? What would they need to add? Well, now we know they definitely need to add a corner outfielder.
They absolutely do. And their lineup did, get a boost in the recent day, where both Austin Riley and Sean Murphy are coming off the IL. So I think probably the strangest thing, besides just subtracting Acuna from their lineup, is the order, because you're used to seeing, that pop at the top there, right? And a 1-pitch leadoff home run gets the job done for Atlanta. And now, that's not there with Acuna Jr. You still got some pop, of course, with Ozzie Albies there. Austin Riley here on Memorial Day batting second with Sean Murphy down in the lineup seventh. But it looks a little bit more human. It doesn't look pedestrian, but it looks a little bit, just above average, which I think for the Mets and the Rockies are two teams that we keep an eye on. We kill for something like that. But you got Albies, Riley, Ozuna, Olsen, and then it gets questionable with Orlando Arcia batting fifth today on Monday, Michael Harris the second, Murphy, Duvall, Kelenic. So still a solid lineup, but you'd rather have Acuna Jr. in there somewhere.